What's up, everyone? Blue Jay here alongside JNT 250, bringing you episode 9 of the Clown Fiesta Podcast. Um, don't think it's going to be too long of an episode this week. We went really long the last week. We have kind of like a lot of topics, but really short topics this week. So I guess since we do have so many topics, we should just dive right into them. Anything you want to shout out or anything, JNT, before we get right into it?
Yeah, you did like a kind of a different intro this time.
Yeah, I thought I would change it
A
up a
little,
little bit.
a
Gotta,
little
gotta
different.
spice it. Yeah. Anyways, let's just get into before we get into our first topic. Actually, I want to just hover over a couple little things that if well, some of you may have seen, some of you may have missed it, but just a couple little news things in the league community. First of which, TF Blade being banned from the league partner program, and we talked about Dom last week getting banned. It looks like actually, I think we talked about who would be next. I think I remember mentioning that. And well, it looks like TF Blade was next. Any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of seen over the last like month, we've seen a few of the more famous LPP members be, either had their, um, you know, their whatever they get from LPP, they've either been dialed back or been completely removed. Like there was that whole drama which originally got started with High getting put on probation from LPP for like being like not even very toxic in a solo queue game, and now we had this Dom news last week, followed up with this TF Blade news now. So I think it's only a matter of time before, you know, the quote unquote toxic streamers kind of get phased out of the LPP.
Yeah, this is actually really disappointing to me, not from Ride's point of view, but from TF Blade's point of view. I said last year, I think, like I was becoming a really big fan of TF Blade, and then he just became really toxic, and I couldn't watch his content anymore. It became so bad just because of how toxic he was, just to like people that are like way below his elo. I don't really have much more to say than that. We don't need to do a deep dive in back in the LPP. But yeah, TF Blade banned, so he won't be able to do any co-streams. I don't know if he was doing any in the first place, but he won't be able to do any of those until next year. They're going to review and see if he's behaving himself. Anyways, after that, Sneaky and Meteos started doing some co-streams, which I thought was really interesting this past weekend. Did you get to catch any of those or no?
No, I didn't personally look at any of it, but I'll probably watch. Like I assume there'll be some like YouTube videos on Sneaky's channel about it, so I'll probably watch those.
Yeah, and there's no secret. I'm a huge Meteos fanboy, so I was really fired up to see Meteos doing some co-streams. He said that he really enjoyed doing it and that he was going to do it again next week. So I would imagine that him and Sneak are going to be doing it next week. But that's a really interesting thing to me because we had lots of like ex players doing co-streams and stuff like, but these are really recent ex players. So it's like maybe that's the new career move. Once you retire, it's not necessarily just streaming; it's co-streaming, but that's remained to be seen. Other than that, anything else before we get into our first main topic for this week?
That's it.
Okay, so let's hop into it. For those of you that missed it, the LEC took on a new sponsor, and there was a lot of controversy around it. I'll let you start us off with this one.
Yeah, so I think it was last Tuesday. There was an announcement that was, high-profile league news that the LEC was going to be adding a permanent partner in Neom for the rest of their summer split. And, sort of there were, just to give some backstory for people who might not know about this partnership or might not know about who Neom is as a company, is they're a company that's personally, I think, ran and backed by the Saudi Arabian government. And, kind of if you just kind of take a look at history in terms of their views on various LGBTQ topics and how they view it as a nation themselves, it's kind of very differential to what the LEC sort of likes to promote. They're very adamant about their interest in pride and LGBTQ matters. Frost Current is openly lesbian, and all the LEC on-air team plus staff, they support all LGBTQ movements and topics. They have shirts that they have on for their store. So I think it kind of came as a shock to everybody when this partnership was initially announced, just due to the circumstances in terms of on the Neom side and their values and you know what they sort of look at. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but it was just viewed as not a good match with what the LEC likes to promote, and so there was a lot of negative reactions on Twitter from both staff and fans, and it sort of led to this partnership being disbanded within I think the next 24 hours. It either happened the morning after or the night after, and then sort of other news that sort of came up, later in the week that the LEC on-air team threatened to not do the Week 8 broadcast until the partnership was either removed or broken. And there's just a lot of negative reaction with this partnership that was announced, and it quickly got reverted.
Yeah, so just before we keep going on, I do see a couple of people in the chat mentioning that there is a little bit of noise. I don't know if you need to reconnect your mic, Nolan, or something like that, but it might be worth a shot trying to do that. I don't know, because I do hear the feedback a little bit myself. I don't really know. If there's nothing we could do about it, then there's nothing we could do about it, but maybe have a look at that or something, because there is definitely feedback. I, hopefully that goes away. I don't hear it at the moment, but you might be muted.
I just muted myself. Hopefully some
Yeah.
of it's been fixed.
I mean, we can hear it a little bit, but I mean, if there's nothing we could do about it, we'll just go on and we'll try to find a fix for next week. Anyways, to your point, um, I really did like to see the Riot employees stepping in and standing up for what they think is right. Now, there was a lot of flack given towards some of the LEC personalities, basically saying that they didn't really put it on the line, and all they really did was say some things on social media. A couple of things about that. One, when you're like in total shock of something like this, like something that a company you work for just totally went against your values, your first thought isn't, oh, how am I going to say this to everyone on Twitter or anything like that? Your first thought is like, what am I going to do? So like the obligation to say the right thing on Twitter should not be what's expected of these people. Mind you, I do think they did do the right thing on Twitter anyways. They said that they weren't going to go on broadcast and they weren't going to support a company that is just really ignorant to some issues that has before like the LEC was so supportive, as you said, of the LGBT community, and then they just do a complete 180 there. So I really felt bad for the Riot employees, especially Frost Gurren, that really had her what's the word, her help me out here,
I don't know, like up in arms, something like that.
she her intentions were called into question,
Oh
which
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought was just so that was so ridiculous to me. Um, but yeah, I'm really happy that they did it. Riot, I'm really happy that they realized it was a mess up and they decided to not go through with the partnership. However, then there was a bunch of Riot tweets the next day from all the Riot employees that didn't seem too optimistic about what their meeting was about. Now, I don't know if there's been any news released on what their meeting was about. Um, but it didn't sound like any of the Riot employees were too optimistic of the outcomes from the meeting.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Riot internal meeting that took place the day after, I think there hasn't been anything official that's come out. It's only all been speculation. But in terms of, what's been speculated is that people think that the meeting was held for, people who work for Riot or people who are associated with Riot in terms of being able to tweet and sort of announce publicly their own thoughts and opinions on various matters. So, people are kind of just speculating that that's what it's about, specifically like if Riot were to come out with some other new deal that might piss off some people, you know, then they're not allowed to tweet about it, or any negative tweet would be viewed like would go against your record within the company or could potentially get you fired. So, you know,
That's
it
definitely what it seemed like. That's exactly what it seemed like.
yeah, I mean it's all speculation to this point, and we don't exactly know what's gone on, and I assume things will probably be revealed in time, either by Riot themselves or employees or potential former employees later down the line. But we'll have to see where this all leads to.
I hope the message wasn't you're not allowed to tweet your thoughts on our partnerships. I hope it was more, hey, look, if you have an issue, come to us first and then, do something. Like that is something that I would be a little bit more okay with. While I don't completely agree with that, that's the only possible good outcome, quote unquote, good outcome that I could see coming from this after so many Riot employees were all clearly very disappointed with the outcome. I hope that they were just told, look, come to us first and tell us that you don't support this and then go ahead and, but it doesn't seem like that was the case. It seems like Riot really doesn't want their employees voicing their opinions on social media, um, which is a little bit upsetting. But like you said, and we can't clarify this enough, that is just pure speculation. So I don't really have much more to say on it. I'm a little bit disappointed in Riot myself. I'm really happy for the European broadcasters and what they did. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's good that they kind of all banded together so quickly and, were able to voice their opinions on the matter and were able to sort of kind of get it shut down.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, for sure, for sure. Next up, we have a Worlds announcement. Now, I don't know about you, but I was hella hyped for this. Basically, Riot came out with a little 3-minute video that they released on Twitter and on LOL Esports, basically saying that Worlds is going to happen this year. And I am like so fired up for that because I'm not gonna lie, I was really afraid of what the outcome was gonna be. And so what the rest of the announcement basically said, Worlds happening in 2020 from September 25th to October 31st, and it's going to happen in Shanghai. So a pretty good win there, and it looks like they're going to go with the bubble format of the NBA and the NHL, which is like I'm really interested to see what this is going to look like because, well, one, I think the content's going to be interesting because we know a bunch of teams like to do different content and stuff like that. So we'll see what the content looks like when you have a bunch of mixed teams and stuff like that together all in the same place. But two, I'm nervous that they can't pull it off. And it's not so much that I'm nervous about Riot not being able to pull it off, but for those that follow Major League Baseball, they did not do a good job of pulling it off. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I think when this announcement happened, I think it was a sigh of relief for most people that okay, Worlds is going to happen. Time was sort of like it was moving along. Like we're about to be in week 9 of LCS Summer Split, and we hadn't gotten an announcement yet about if Worlds was going to happen. So I think people were a little bit worried if we were going to get a Worlds or if it was going to be delayed or if it wasn't going to happen in China and it was going to be potentially like it's going to potentially be played like online in like Korea or something like that. Like people really didn't know and people were speculating in terms of what was going to happen. So I think it was a sigh of relief in terms of hearing that Worlds is going to happen. It's still going to be in China, only exclusively being held in Shanghai. I know normally what they've been doing recently with Worlds is visiting a lot of major cities in the surrounding areas for like the group stage, the playing stage, the first rounds of playoffs, Worlds playoffs, and then they would always do a big hype finals in a major city. So good to hear that it's happening and it still is happening in China. One thing to note is they will be doing Worlds again in China for season 11 in 2021, sort of to kind of keep their promise of, what they plan to do in terms of Riot's big 10-year anniversary. They had, big plans for this Worlds in terms of the fan experience, even the viewing experience in terms of all the things that they wanted to do and wanted to be able to pull off are kind of all getting bumped next year. And then in turn, North America is getting their Worlds bumped back one more year. So Worlds is happening in North America in 2022 instead of 2021 now. But yeah, I think everyone was excited to hear that Worlds is going to be happening again because with no MSI this year, people I think really were kind of disappointed and obviously, it wasn't going to happen with all of the COVID-19 stuff happening around the world. So it's great that we are going to get some international play this year because people have really been missing out on it since there was no MSI.
Yeah, and part of me wonders like how much of this is, oh, we really wanted to deliver on our promise of giving China the experience, the world's experience that they deserved in season 10. And part of me wonders how much of it is, well, look, our biggest draw is in China. This is a really good excuse to do China twice back to back years.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm really curious. However, with that said, and I think you mentioned this, Worlds will be in North America again in 2022. So they announced that. But I, as an NA fan, I'm not disappointed in this whatsoever. Because one, I do think that they will offer a wicked ass show in China next year. So that's great. And two, I actually think we're kind of lucky that they come to North America. The draw is literally like 100 times more in China than it is in North America, as far as like the fans and stuff and whatnot. So I kind of think of it this way, and this is a little bit of a different analogy, but I think you know where I'm coming from here. If the Super Bowl were to be hosted in England, for example, you'd have a great draw. But there's a reason why every year the Super Bowl is in America because that's where the biggest draw is and that's where you make money. So it's like, yeah, you could grow the scene in North America by having Worlds here, but we all know that they're going to make the most money having it in China. So as an NA fan, I'm really happy that they do come to North America and they at least give us a shot every, I don't know, what is it, 5 years or whatever it is, at least we get a chance, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the normal way they do it is on a cycle. With it goes, I think the cycle first started with North America, Korea, Europe, China, or maybe it was North America, Korea, Europe, China, and it's supposed to follow that same 4 year cycle, but they specifically altered it before all the COVID-19 stuff happened to have that China was going to be hosting Worlds in 2020, and so the whole schedule is getting moved back at basically another 2 years due to one, them wanting to prioritize China, and two, Worlds kind of being pushed back or the big spectacle being pushed back another year. So good that we're
Is the
having.
plan?
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, good that we're having Worlds. Like this is only positive stuff that we're getting.
Yeah,
So I'm happy
true,
about
true,
that.
true, true, true. And I was wondering, is it now the case that they're going to go to China every other year? Because that was what I had. That's what I had in my mind, but I'm not sure where I'm getting that from. So I wasn't sure if I'm just making things up in my head or if they actually do plan to go to China every other year because once again, that is where the biggest draw comes from.
I mean, I don't know. Potentially that could be something that they do if they recognize how, I assume they're going to make a shit ton of money on the 2021 Worlds in China.
Yeah.
Obviously, there can't be a ton of money to be made this year at Worlds, as you're going to have no gate, no purchases, like, and no fan purchases at games because there's obviously going to be no fans. But I don't know. I don't know. I think they're still planning to follow the same 4 year rotation of North America, Korea, Europe, China. But who knows? They could change it.
And yeah, and for people wondering what the hell I'm talking about, the hypothetical rotation for me would be China, then Korea, then China, then Europe, then China, then North America. That would be the hypothetical um, rotation. But again, that is all speculation because something in my head is telling me that, but I don't have any reason or any proof of why that would be up there. But
Yeah.
yeah, nothing but good news. We're getting Worlds. We're getting it this year in China. We're getting it next year in China, and we're getting it in North America. This is huge.
Yeah.
So I'm
I'm really glad
fired
that
up.
they're following the bubble format, similar to the NBA and the NHL. And for people who might not know exactly what we mean by the bubble format, is pretty much you're going to have all your players from all your teams. So, for example, all the North American players, all the Chinese players, all the Korean players, all the European players, they all gather into one sort of hub, and they basically are never allowed to leave it, and that's why it's sort of called a bubble. Pretty much I assume, there's been no announcements, but I assume they're all going to be in the same hotel. They're all going to be traveling to and from the same venue with constant testing going on before you get in. And I know in the NHL and the NBA, they've had a lot of success with the bubble. All the players, I know both leagues have announced that there's been no cases in either of their bubbles ever since all the players entered the bubbles about 2 weeks ago. So for those two leagues, it seems that the bubble format is really working, and you kind of already mentioned before how Major League Baseball is really failing, as they didn't, it's difficult for them to follow the bubble format, and they've really made a mess of it.
Major League Baseball sucks, man. But I don't want to get too far into that because I'll get too fired up for no reason. Anything else before we move on?
No, I think that's it.
All right, so this week for our main topic, we didn't exactly have a title for it, but we wanted to cover all the teams that are kind of interesting right now. And it just so happens that all the interesting teams are the teams that actually win some games from time to time. So we kind of just have the top 6 teams that we're going to be covering this week. Starting off with Team Liquid. Who knew that this team would be alone in first place? I don't think anybody saw this coming. Mostly because of Cloud9 dropping, but also TL starting to look a lot better. So give me your thoughts on TL.
Yeah, definitely very surprising. I remember back to our first episode that we ever did, and we were both very high on Team Liquid, but we were also worried at the same time. Like we were doing that under the assumption that everything was going to work out with Jat coming in and Tactical coming in, and honestly, it seemed to work pretty seamlessly, other than maybe a couple rough games at the start of the split. This team really hasn't faltered too much. And yeah, like you said, they're sitting alone at first at 13-3, and at this point, it's really difficult for them to lose a hold of first seed uh, going into week 9 with only 2 games left for each team. The only scenario
They
where
have
that,
to 0-2, right?
yeah, they have to 0-2, and either TSM or C9 has to 2-0. Mainly
Right.
that the main matchup that we'll talk about a little bit later probably is the TSM versus Team Liquid game, which I think is on Sunday of week 9. That's going to be a really big game if TL were to lose their first game. and for TSM if they want to overtake C9 because TSM has a much harder schedule in Week 9 than C9 does.
Yep, yep. And just the other thing that I thought of too is just how like even though TL's been winning all these games, we've been talking all split long about how their wins haven't felt that good. I think that was a little bit different this weekend though. I thought that their wins were a lot better, and it kind of seems like just over the course of the split, their wins are just going up a little bit better as far as like how much you respect the win. And how good the gameplay is. So it's nice to see. It's really exciting for TL players and with C9 slumping and Blabber slumping, I think we could definitely say Core JJ is the front runner now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think unless disaster strikes in Week 9 and Blabber returns to first first split or first half of the split form, I think Core JJ's kind of got it in the bag at this point.
Yeah, and it's well deserved. Like we have seen Core carry some games, specifically lately, the game last week against Cloud9, that was all Core JJ. So really nice to see him playing well. And I want to talk a little bit about Broxa because Broxa is another player that all split long we've been saying, yeah, they're winning, but Broxa hasn't looked to be on the same page, and I totally agree with that statement and everybody who said that. But this weekend started to look a lot better. He looked pretty good on the Graves this time around. So, what do you think about Broxa?
Yeah, I think he's him and Team Liquid as a whole, they've kind of been on like a steady incline, like you sort of mentioned before. I think with all the other teams, it's a bit up and down. Like some teams, they'll look really great one week, they'll look really bad. They'll have like a random 0-2 week, then they'll have a week where they go 1-1 expected, and then they'll have this really good 2-0 week that nobody really thought were to happen. But with Team Liquid, it kind of just seems like they've been steadily improving on a week to week basis. And, things are really coming together and at the right time, overtaking C9, looking strong going into playoffs. And I don't know if I would call them the front runner in playoffs quite yet, because even though C9 is slumping, I don't think I'm ready to call Team Liquid as, the front runner because I still think that this team can be more and does have a higher ceiling, but at the same time, I think C9 still has a lot of room to improve from their recent falters, and I think TSM is also on the rise. So I think a lot of it hinges on with this weekend and TL being able to get a clean 2-0 victory heading into playoffs if you really want to call them the favorite entering into playoffs.
Yeah, the best thing about Team Liquid right now is that this is the first time that everyone looks solid. Like
Yeah,
throughout even in almost all of their wins, I would say probably almost all of them, there was always like, well, they looked good for the most part, but this player, and they will look well for the most part, but then this player, and that's the best thing about TL. I don't want to go too much more on TL because I don't think we have too much new things to say that we haven't said in the past. But yeah, everyone on the team is looking good for the first time. I'm still in agreement with you though that I'm not ready to say they're the front runner, but a lot more confidence in this team now than I had 3 or 4 weeks ago.
definitely.
Moving on, we got Cloud9. Maybe the reason why TL is not, well, not maybe, probably the reason why TL is now sitting alone in first place. Definitely don't want to take credit away from TL, but in order for one team to fall to go ahead of another team, one team has to lose, and well, Cloud9 has been losing a lot. I want to talk a little bit about drafts. What do you think about their drafts? Any thoughts on that before I get going on that?
Yeah, I think C9, people were giving people sort of weren't sort of they weren't believing that C9 was a bad team. They were really kind of doing some experimental drafts in their first couple losses, mainly the one to Hunter T, and then EG, and then also a little bit against TL with the Sona Lux. But I think their drafts haven't been as bad, but their play is really starting to decline. I think specifically from top jungle, their play is sort of starting to slip. Blabber doesn't seem to be this monster in the jungle that he was in the first half of the split. And, I think when C9 just plays at a generally slower pace, it seems that they don't exactly know what to do when the game sort of starts to stall out. They're used to being very aggressive. They're used to fighting a lot. We're seeing them, force fights that don't need to be forced. I mean, I remember when both of us were watching the TSM game this past weekend when Blabber, he's playing the Volley Bear, walked in, stole an Ocean Drake, and then he proceeded to just ult into 5 people with his team sort of pretty far behind him. It just seems that C9 is maybe even too aggressive right now in terms of taking fights that they, you know, these 60-40 fights, which maybe in turn is a 40-60 on their end because they feel like they need to get back into the game.
And the things that like Cloud9 fans should be worried about now are things that people have been worried about for a long time now. So for one thing, the aggression. So you talked about how Blabber's just going in, regardless of whether it being a good engage or not, he is engaging. And that was one of the things that I had an issue with before the season even started. So I will admit, I was a skeptic of Blabber. I was not expecting when he was MVP last split. I did not expect that. I did not predict that whatsoever. I thought that he was going to really have issues with his aggression because we've seen it in the past. And those worries are kind of sneaking back in a little bit. The other thing is, and people have mentioned it this split, is what if Cloud9 isn't ahead? Because, and I remember Zazel saying this in an interview with Travis, basically saying like, we're seeing Cloud9 win the early game all the time, so they have that luxury of being aggressive and fighting every opportunity they get. But they haven't been winning or smashing the early game anymore. And now you're seeing them take these fights when they don't have the advantage anymore, and they're just getting destroyed. Like you mentioned, Blabber going in to 5 people, he was following up the Ash arrow. He got a little bit baited there. But like you need to know when to be aggressive and when not. And it seems like Blabber doesn't have that. And it just seems like they're not winning their lanes anymore. And I think the biggest reason for that is their drafts. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I definitely agree that their drafts haven't been the greatest lately. You know, I mentioned they were doing a little bit in terms of experimenting in the draft in the earlier losses in the second half of the split. Just like they're 2-5 in the second half of the split. They were a 9-0 team when the first half of the split ended, and everyone was talking up to 18-0. Like they had just beaten TSM in week 5 in their first game before they lost to 100T, and everyone was talking about, okay, the 18-0 split is real and it's alive, and it's I think people were I think if you were a betting man at that time, you probably would bet that CNN was going to get the 18-0, but they're 2-5 in their last 7 games. Not looking too good. I think it's up there with CLG and 100T as like the worst records in the last half of the
In the
splits.
second half?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
I
not.
think CLG has to be worse, right?
No, no,
Because I
no,
don't think they've won. Have they won a game in the second half?
They won one game.
Was the EG game in the second half?
Yeah, I think it was the first game of the second half.
Okay.
Because they got perfect game, remember, in the first meeting, so it had to have been the
True.
the second time they played. But
Very
yeah, I
good
mean,
point. So it was the first game of the second half.
yeah, we were
Yeah.
kind of talking about, me and Jamie, on Sunday when we were watching the games. You know, is it time to sort of potentially hit the panic button right now? And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Do they need to be panicking? Do CDN fans need to be worried?
So I personally am not that worried for C9. So there's a little bit of a weird thing going on here. So am I worried about their gameplay? Not specifically. A little bit worried about Blabber just because of his aggression, sure. Licorice didn't look good this past weekend, but I do think he'll bounce back. What I am more worried about is, as I've mentioned a few times now, is their draft. And what I mean by that is, so I want to go. I don't want to get too deep into their drafts, but just a little bit here. Specifically with the Kennen pick versus TSM. So I thought that Cloud9 was hard winning this draft against TSM. They got a great matchup, but they got the Karma and Ash into the Caitlyn Morg. And for those that don't know, when Caitlyn is playing, if you have Caitlyn on your team, the idea of Caitlyn is to play really aggressive, shove the lane, and grab some turret plates, and get your advantage by just hard shoving. It's really difficult to do against a Karma and an Ash. And so they had they baited TSM into taking that. They got the perfect bot lane, and they were performing well. They were winning this bot lane. Where the draft went wrong was after the second ban phase for Cloud9 was on red side, so they had the 4th pick, and they blind picked the Kennen. Now, to me, this makes no sense because, well, there's a couple reasons why. One, I think that counter picking for top lane is way more important right now than picking for mid lane because so many mid lane matchups, even if you are counterpicked, they just turn into wave clear lanes. It's wave clear and roam, which Niski does great. And so they could have taken the Twisted Fate. That's what I didn't understand. They could have taken Twisted Fate. They took the Kennen blind. And now the other reason why that's really bad is you're picking that into Broken Blade. Broken Blade is a guy that has a champion Ocean. He's got a lot of different champions that he can play, and he will play them. He will play the counter, and he absolutely destroyed Licorice in that lane because he got the counter pick. And also, Bjergsen ended up taking the Twisted Fate that Cloud9 should have taken, and he impacted that lane like crazy. And so that's why when these team fights came around, you had an under itemized Kennen that couldn't do what he's supposed to do in team fights. And that's why when you have Blabber going in taking these team fights, you can't really do anything because you don't have the damage to follow up. So that to me was a really big oopsie. The other one, it was against Golden Guardians. I didn't like the Aphelios and Nautilus and their 2-3 picks. They were on blue side. I really thought that they should have first picked the Callista. Thought Callista was great. And I mentioned this yesterday. I don't remember to who, but I mentioned it to someone that I thought that if they take the Callista and they give up the set, you could pick the Blitzcrank because Blitzcrank is great into set. You hook him and then you just break his shield with your ultimate. So I really would have liked to have seen that. But oh, and I also remember. Okay, this is weird because Scott just showed up in the chat, but Scott mentioned that he would have liked to have seen Zaire Khan in that draft as well if the draft went the same way. So there are a couple different things that Cloud9 could have done different. I do think that their draft is really hurting them. And the reason why I'm not that worried is because I really do think that C9 will find a way to fix their drafts, specifically in best of fives. So that's my little rant about Cloud9's drafting. Sorry if I went on for a little bit there. But yeah, I think they need to clean up their drafting, and I think they will. So it's partial worry about their gameplay. I'm not that worried about their drafting.
Yeah, definitely agree with you that specifically when you're playing up against a player like Broken Blade, blind picking top lane can potentially be a bit of a blunder because he is such a carry player and does have a pretty large champion pool. I think against most teams, and I think a lot of the teams in the LCS just kind of throw their top laner on any random, easy to pilot blind pickable champion. You know, I've said this before, and I'm not a fan of putting your top laner on the tankish set. I'm actually a fan of the split push set. Licorice does a lot with going Bork Triforce, but a lot of the leagues do Black Cleaver set, or they pick Aatrox a little bit less now, or Ornn. So I think blind picking the Kennen in some scenarios can be all right, but like you said, specifically when you're going against Broken Blade, he has no problem with whipping out some damage counter to it, and he played it well, and I think that was the primary reason why they lost. And in terms of the other one you mentioned, picking the Aphelios Nautilus when you had Callista first pick up. I think Nautilus is such a terrible champion. That champion is just so bad. I don't know, like the champion's just not good. It has so many counter picks. It does poorly into so many matchups, especially with a lot of the jungle champions that are going around right now, specifically Trundle and Set Jungle. Nautilus just gets hard dicked by both of those champions, so anytime you have a Nautilus on your team, if the enemy team picks Trundle or Set, your Nautilus is pretty much useless for the majority of the game. It's a very easy champion to sort of counter around unless the conditions are perfect. So I'm not a fan of ever picking Nautilus in the draft unless you pretty much have like perfect conditions where you have a good bot lane matchup and you don't have any champion in the top or jungle that can like hard counter the Nautilus. So I'm not a fan of the pick. Only if the conditions are right do I ever like seeing it, but I'd just rather not see Nautilus.
Yeah, I basically agree. I don't think there's too much more that I have to add on that. The only thing that I will add when talking about C9 is that I think that they're going to have to show us something really good this weekend for us to kind of, for fans rather, I guess not even for myself, but for other fans to kind of gain faith in this team. Because from what I've seen on social media, there's a lot of people that are panicking. And so if they want to put that panic to bed, this is a weekend where you need to show up. You need to not mess around with your drafts, and you need to start to perform the way you've been performing the whole year. It's the absolute worst time to go into a slump, quite honestly.
Yeah, they do have a little bit of a break. They played Dignitas and CLG this week, two of the bottom teams in the league. So I think, if there's a time to panic, I feel like if you lose to either Dig or CLG, or worst case scenario, you lose to both of those teams, then you can hit the panic button. But I'm expecting C9 to, I guess maybe now my expectations are that they're just going to smash CLG and Dignitas, but I need to see some clean wins from C9 to sort of, you know, restore my confidence in them.
Yeah, understandably. All right, so let's move on to TSM. Also, try to unplug and replug in your mic again because it kind of helped last time. Maybe give it a shot. I don't know. Moving on to TSM. I can't believe we're talking about TSM right now. I can't believe we're talking about TSM being tied with Cloud9 specifically. That to me is something that I did not think we were going to say at all. Well, I mean, TSM wasn't even looking that great in some of their wins, and then they absolutely popped off against C9 this weekend. Like they picked a really good time to show up. We talked about how it's a bad time for C9 to slump. Well, TSM's getting a really good time to get hot. So really liking the way this team looked specifically in their game against Cloud9.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Bjergsen, was a huge part of that Cloud9 game. As you mentioned, the TF was open for C9. They opted not to pick it. They gave it over to Bjergsen, and he was honestly perfectly punishing Licorice's mistakes that happened in the top lane. He got his flash blown early, I think at level 5, by the Aurelia when his wave was getting frozen on him. He tried to go push it in. The Aurelia hit an E on him, and he basically had to flash in response, or else his wave was gonna get perma frozen on him, or he was going to die. So he kind of was forced to burn the flash. Bjergsen went up there, killed him level 6. Kind of just a repeat of the same thing. Broken Blade burned his flash again. Bjergsen went up there, killed him. I think he played the TF how you're supposed to play the TF in terms of, as you mentioned, mid lane's about shoving the wave and roaming. So I think he did a really good job. Here in Player of the Week, for this week at the LCS, the Mastercard Player of the Week. So good for him. I think there was some other candidates that could have been a better choice. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep.
But it was a great weekend from TSM. I know people were a little bit worried. I know a couple episodes ago we kind of had this team on the decline because they were at, well, I think they were 1-3 in their last 4 games. That was at the time before they subbed out Biofrost Retreats. So I think it's good to see TSM picking it up at the end of the split, kind of how they always do. I think TSM they're kind of a team when, like, they might look a little sketchy in the first 6 to 7 weeks of the split, but they always seem to have this kind of late playoff push towards the end of the split. So they have a hard week coming up in this week 9. They play both Golden Guardians and Team Liquid. So I know it's kind of put up or shut up for TSM if I think they want to be considered a top 2 team with either TL or C9 for this last week.
Yeah, and so what's interesting to me is like I do think that they, like I said, I think they looked a lot better. Yet I still have them going 0-2 this weekend because I think Golden Guardians looks better, and I still think TL is better. But I mean, that's remained to be seen. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, I totally agree with you that it's nice to see Bjergsen getting back to his former self. Now, I don't want to say that he's season 4 to season 6 Bjergsen because I don't think he's there. I don't think he's just hard shitting on everyone and just 1v9ing, but he definitely is the best player on this team right now. And he's putting all of his advantages, he's getting them, and he is distributing his advantage to his other lanes. And I think he's the biggest reason why they're winning games right now. So it's really nice to see Bjergsen playing at a really high level once again because I don't think we saw that in season 8 and 9. I thought we saw an okay Bjergsen, but now we're seeing a pretty damn good Bjergsen again. And I think one of the other really encouraging things from this past weekend was Broken Blade. If there's anybody who needed some confidence, it was Broken Blade, man. He was not having a good split. Everyone knows he's a good player, but he wasn't performing well. So really happy for him. Even if he did get the counter pick, you have to do something with it. And Aurelia is not an easy champion to pop off on, and he certainly did. So good for Broken Blade. I think TSM fans actually have something to be excited for. Even if they do go 0-2, which I think they will, but that is for sure not certain. I think that regardless, you do have a reason to be excited for their playoff run because we have seen Bjergsen in playoffs. We've seen Doublelift in playoffs. This is a good time to get hot, and I don't know. I think that they have a good chance of making a good playoff run.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think they're going to be a strong team going into playoffs. The only concern that I do have for them is Spica. I think he's a player that has been exposed previously in some of their games, and I really want to see how he holds up in a best of 5. Because the only other time we saw him in a best of 5 was against a playoff series against Clutch back in season 9, as well as a Gauntlet series, which he kind of got smashed in both of those games. So definitely want to see Spica just perform to expectations mainly. I want to see him do well.
Yeah, for sure. So the thing with me is Spica's kind of he's roller coasty, man. He's up and he's down, he's up, he's down. I still think that this player is just going to keep getting better the more he plays with this team. I think this is the best jungler they've had in a long time. Maybe he's not an MVP level jungler, but he's actually decent. And that's all TSM really has been just they've been just begging for a decent jungler for years now, ever since Sven Skaren left after season 7. So I'm glad they got a jungler that can at least hold his own. I do agree with you that I'm not totally confident in him, but I'm not totally doubting him. And believe me, there's lots of junglers in this league that I have lots of doubts with. and he's not one of them. So really, really good to see TSM starting to perform well. I'm glad that they're getting a lot of wins under their belt, and yeah, see how they do in playoffs.
Hashtag Grubhub Gamer.
Yeah. Um, moving on, we got FlyQuest. Now, I was hella fired up to see FlyQuest popping off this weekend. Um, I think that this team looks good. I think they are good. I've been saying this all split long that I think this is a really good team. And I thought this past weekend they looked pretty damn good. They didn't look magnificent. There were a couple hiccups in the EG game, but nothing too major. And even when things started to go south a little bit, they were definitely able to basically just fix any little mistakes that they had made and honestly just close out the game in a pretty clean way.
Yeah, definitely a solid week from FlyQuest. They're sort of the other team, similar to TSM, that's sort of been making steady improvements for the last few weeks. They had a bit of a rough patch in there when they had Mash in. I know they've subbed Mash back out a little while ago, and they have Turtle back in, which I'm definitely on board with. I still don't understand why Mash was subbed in the first place, and I think he cost them a couple wins in two of the games that he was playing. One with that time he's playing Ezreal, we inted over the wall, and the
And then the
other where
Senna
he
one.
he whipped up the AD farming Senna, which was a bit of a disaster.
I didn't think that was totally on him. I thought that was a bad choice, and they lost the lane before they even made it to lane. But anyways, yeah, go on. I do agree with you that he wasn't good for the team. Go on.
Yeah, but they're making steady improvements. I think this is a team that definitely is um, in top four to top three form. I think a lot of it is going to be, like I said, hinging on this next weekend with TSM in terms of their performances against Golden Guardians and Team Liquid. I think, if TSM were to go 0-2 or have a bad 1-1 or something like that, and FlyQuest has a strong 0-2, I definitely think FlyQuest could be considered the third best team going to playoffs, and that's again not even counting C9. C9 could, really disappoint in week 9, and who knows, maybe they're the second best team. We've seen this team beat Team Liquid um, just a couple weeks ago in a best of one. So I think there's a lot of confidence FlyQuest will be going into the playoffs with, and I'm definitely excited to see how this team performs because, honestly, this team is kind of giving me a bit of an old CLG vibe in terms of they don't necessarily have the top performing players at their like respective roles, like individually, but when it all comes together, like this team works really, really well. I don't think anybody was of the opinion that Solo, Santorn, and Ignar were like top players in this league, but in this team and the way they're playing right now, they look like top players in this league.
Yeah. No, definitely agree. Like it is kind of the old CLG vibes in the sense that everyone's just solid. Now, the only guy that I would say is kind of a superstar player is PoE. He was great when he was in Europe. He's been great ever since he came to NA. Even when he was playing on Optic, he was kind of 1v9ing for all of Optic's wins and last year, that's another thing too. I'll
Yes.
remind everybody that last year he was on CLG and the lineup was everything the same now except Poe Belter was replaced by Power of Evil. So if anybody kind of wants to know
And
just how
Biofrost.
important PoE, yeah, and Biofrost, if anyone wants to know just how important PoE was to that CLG roster, I think we're seeing what happens when you get rid of PoE. He's really good, man, and I think he's actually leading the league in kills now. He got 20 kills this past weekend. I don't know if anybody knew that, but I thought he got hard robbed by Bjergsen on the. I don't even want to say by Bjergsen because it's not Bjergsen's fault. But whoever voted for MVP of the week, you give your head a shake. It was so PoE and it was obvious to me. This guy was going nuts. 20 freaking kills, and I even want to say that in the second game, when he was playing Corki, he went 7-2 and something. He had 7 kills, but they banned or picked 5 other mid laners before he had to be relegated over to the Corki pick, and he still popped off with that too. So PoE's looking really, really good. I agree with you that Ignar's looking good. I also heard some people being a little bit iffy on Ignar because he's played so many Recon games. So for those that don't know, he's played 6 Recon games this split. And I want to put those worries to bed right away because for one, uh, well, first of all, he's looked really, really good on the Recon. But two, if he's not playing the Recon, he's usually playing the Pantheon, and he's been really good on that as well. And he's drawing out all these bans. And now, if you're forcing every team to ban Recon and Pantheon against you, you're completely ruining their draft. So that's one. The other reason is last spring, I remember by the eighth game of the split, he had played 8 champions. So this isn't like a guy that only has Rakan in his back pocket to play. He has a bunch of different champions that he could pull out at any time. We saw that in spring. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with this player. He makes a lot of nice plays happen. He's great in lane, and I think he's one of the biggest reasons why this team looks so good right now.
Yeah, he had two Thresh picks this weekend, and he performed really well on the Thresh. He was landing a ton of hooks. He was playing the not the Aftershock Thresh, but he was playing the Spellbook Thresh. So definitely in terms of like how you need to play Thresh, it's a lot different because you don't have that extra tankiness that you get with the Aftershock. And he's playing, like I said, the Spellbook Thresh, and I think he played it really well. Interesting, he rushed first item Shurelya's Reverie, and I wonder if that's sort of going to be like another kind of little meta support thing we see sort of changed in terms of people going maybe Spellbook instead of Aftershock. I know a lot of other supports have started to take the Spellbook now. I know Braum takes the Spellbook. Rakan sometimes take the Spellbook if they don't need to go like Guardian in lane or something like that. So we're kind of seeing a lot of the Spellbook supports pop up a little bit more, and I think credit to Ignar for that, specifically
I
with the
like that you
Thresh.
bring up I like that you bring up the Shurelya's because I have seen other people build other supports build Shurelya's as of late. I don't remember if they were all on Thresh or
Core
not. I have
Core,
no
J, Core
idea.
JJ built it on Bard. He does he opts
Okay.
for the less tanky Bard in terms of he goes the Shurelya's first item instead of the other Bard build where people go I think Deadman's Plate. So I know Core JJ builds it on Bard whenever he plays Bard, but other in terms of other supports I haven't seen any others other than Bard and Thresh.
Okay, well, you're just helping me out even more here because I was going to say you want the Shurelya's on someone on your team that knows when to hit the go button.
Mhm.
And that is something that pardon me, Ignar does really, really well. And well, obviously, Core JJ knows exactly what he's doing. We've talked about him as being the MVP of the split. And so if you got those two guys building the Shurelya's, you know that it's the right guys building that item and kind of getting that engage. It's a very Ignar item to build. So I like to see that. I'd like to see it a little bit more. And the only other thing that I have to say about FlyQuest is Turtle is not a liability, which I know that sounds like harsh, like he's always been a liability, but it's true. He's been a liability in a lot of different splits, and like it's nice to see a guy have kind of a bounce back when it's towards the end of their career. I'm saying that in quotations because we don't know if it's towards the end of his career, but we do know he's been around a long time. And so usually players that have been around for so long, they kind of fall off, and that doesn't seem to be the case with Wild Turtle.
Yeah, I know people were even having questions like, should Turtle still be on FlyQuest? Do they need to make a move? Like we always talked about when Doublelift was up for trade, should FlyQuest go after Doublelift or should they get a new member? But yeah, like you said, it really seems that Turtle is not a liability anymore. He's not doing his classic flash into the entire enemy team play.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Really excited. I think this team's going to make a good playoff run. Uh, I'm looking forward to see that if it does happen. Anything else before we move on to the other team that's starting to rise a little bit?
Sequest, go next.
Sequest. Hashtag Sequest. Hashtag live good. They did that storyline a little bit more this weekend. Anyways, Golden Guardians. Speaking of looking good, it's nice to see this team popping off, man. We've been talking about them for a couple of weeks now, saying this team's getting better, and they're starting to look just a little bit better every week. And I mean, beating Cloud9 is definitely a good way to make yourself look good. And they looked great doing it too, by the way. It's a really nice, clean game out of Golden Guardians. I like seeing this team play, man. They're fun to watch. They're just clean. And you don't get a lot of that in North America. So, what do you think about Golden Guardians right now?
I love me some Golden Guardians. I think this team is really, really good. They're little fact here. They're 8-3 in their last 11 games, which is only behind Team Liquid in terms of best record in the last 11 games. So I think this is a really strong team that has been getting better ever since their slow start to the split. I know a lot. The big talking point was, kind of it was Golden Guardians like a bit of a disappointment when they started off 1-3, losing to teams like CLG and whatnot. So I think people were kind of a little bit nervous going into the start of the split and then, a couple weeks in. But I think everyone is really now seeing the strength of this team over the last, what is it, like 6 weeks. This team has been on a bit of a tear, only really losing to Team Liquid, I know was one of their three losses. They lost to FlyQuest one time, another top team, and I can't remember their other loss, but I know the two main ones were against Team Liquid and FlyQuest. Both of them actually being very, very close games. I think at points in the game it could have gone either way. So I'm really happy
Yeah,
to see this team performing well because I think they have a lot of good players, specifically FBI and Closer. I'm a really big Closer fan. I think honestly he's up there with Blabber in terms of best jungler in the league. I think he's really, really good.
Santorin.
I like those two better. I'm not saying Santorin's not up there, but for me, if I were to have my pick of the litter on a jungler, it'd be Blabber or Closer. But I think the main reason for a lot of improvements for this team has actually been the performances of Huhi and Hanser. Hanser has really been a proponent of the top lane Kennen. He's really good at it. He's been whipping out some other sort of niche picks. He had a Kale game a little while ago, and with Huhi, I know we mentioned this. I think it was either last episode or maybe the episode prior, but sort of the role in his team and kind of what they've turned him into in terms of instead of playing the Tom Kench and the Thresh. He plays a lot of set. He's playing some of the Bard, and he's looking really, really good. I love watching this team play. I love watching their drafts. They kind of always seem to have like a new look on the meta in terms of every draft. You know, one week they're picking the Olaf carry for Closer, and then they'll put him on the Volley Bear and give the reins to FBI and put him on the Callista or the Aphelios. Demonte, he's been a really solid starter for them ever since acquiring him. I think, they're going with the whole Tanner time thing that kind of cropped up with Clutch and Dignitas, and people are kind of questioning like, oh yeah, why was this guy not playing on a team in the spring split? So I'm glad to see Demonte playing well. He's looking really good. Had a really good game against C9 on the Syndra, and yeah, I love everything about this team. I think they're my dark horse for potentially taking down like a TSM or a FlyQuest in a playoff series.
Yeah, and I really like how you bring up Hanser and Huhi specifically because when we've seen this team do well in the past, it is from guys like Closer and FBI. Like that's who you kind of expect it from. Closer and FBI have been good for a while now. But Huhi, we talked about how Wild Turtle was a liability. This guy was a liability, man. Like it was never looking good. And we saw last split. Even Golden Guardians didn't have that much faith in him. They were trying to put Keith support, and they were panicking. They didn't know what to do in the support role. And now you got Huhi, who's been looking very good. And we talk about how FBI is winning in all these stats for bot laners, for laning stats specifically. You can't just credit the AD carry with that. That comes with the support, and Huhi's looked really good. So I'm so happy that he's had a resurgence as well. He's been really, really good this split. And then I want to talk a little bit about Hanser. You mentioned his unique picks, the Kale, the Kennen, all this stuff. The Scion that he whipped out this last
I
weekend was
forgot about
very
the
good.
Sion. Yeah, it was good.
This guy has been great, and I think he should be in the consideration for the best top laners this split for the all team or all pro team, whatever the hell they call it. I don't freaking remember. But he's been fantastic. And he's another guy that is playing a bunch of different stuff. He's got 11 unique picks in what is now 16 games. So he's playing a bunch of different shit. And not only that is he's performing well. So he's second in CSD at 15. He's got +8. And he's also second along with XP differential at 15, plus 209 in XP. So he's up there just behind Licorice, who we know is smashing in all of these stats, by the way. Really nice to see Hanser come back into his own. And that's kind of what this team feels like a little bit. It feels like some guys that you thought may have been past their prime, but they're making it back a little bit with Hanser and Huhi specifically. So really, really happy with this team. I am in agreement with you that this team has the potential to make a playoff run. I don't think that Closer is better than Santorin. I know I already cut you off and said that, but I think it's very close, and I think he's one of the biggest reasons why this team's winning. And I think they're going to beat TSM this weekend. So I think they're going to 2-0, but that remains to be seen.
I can't think of like a Golden Guardians Twitter thing to insert before we go to the next one.
Okay.
I don't see their like tweets. I don't think they're relevant on Twitter at all.
Maybe
Tanner
maybe that's a
time? I
sign
don't know.
Golden Guardians need to step up their Twitter game. But
It's
regardless,
yeah, it's Tanner time, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean that's one player, right? You gotta pick it up a little bit. But anyways, next up we got Evil Geniuses, or this is our last team actually that we wanted to talk about this week. Not winning a lot of games lately, yet I don't think they're that bad. What do you think about Evil Geniuses right now?
Yeah, they're in a bit of a weird spot, honestly. They're 2-4 ever since making the swap over from Kumo and Jizuke to Huni and Golden Glue. So it's kind of been interesting to see. I think everyone is really riding high on EG's victory against C9, and I think that was propelling a lot of the thought process that okay, this lineup is better than the previous lineup. But I think recently people are kind of wondering now, like, is this new roster really better than the old roster? The records don't indicate that. Some of their games honestly don't indicate that they had an all right showing. Like I don't really know what to think about this team. They're kind of in this weird state for me where I don't exactly know which roster I favor. And honestly, it's potentially too late into the season to maybe see Kumo and Jizuke come back in. We'll have to see if these two players are involved when playoffs come around. If they're going to run some sort of seven-man roster, similar to what C9 did with, if you're down in a series, you throw these two players in, see if they can kind of give your team a bit of a morale boost and a bit of a boost to finish out the playoff series. And yeah, they've been all right. I think Sven Skaren, I know we've been talking about him a lot this split in terms of and comparing him to his time on C9 and ending that being the Honda MVP in summer season 9. And I think my overall thoughts on Sven Skaren on this EG roster is that he's not. I don't want to say he's a bad player or he's a lot worse than he was, but he definitely doesn't have the tools that he had on C9 to sort of really shine. And I think
Totally agree.
his role on the team is sort of diminished a little bit. He's definitely not a carry threat in terms of what he plays. The Lee Sin and the Gragas have sort of seemed to fallen out of meta, two of his most powerful champions. He's being stuck on the set a lot. I've voiced my opinions on set jungle a lot. I think the champ is really bad, unless there's certain conditions where if enemy champion, if their role is to go into a team fight, your role is to make that guy not be in the team fight by throwing the set R. So in instances, I think it's all right, but I think it's not a good blind pickable champion.
To,
Nevertheless,
to
though, I think Sven Skaren, he definitely doesn't have the tools he had on C9, but I don't think that makes him a worse player. I just think that
yeah.
we're seeing him come like back down to earth a little bit in terms of what we saw in spots on TSM, because I think he's kind of similar, I think, to Smithy in the fact that when this player has like if they have good players and they're winning lane, that he can do whatever he wants and he's a threat. But when the overall strength of your team is sort of scaled back and you have to kind of be fixing, like you're patching holes on like a sinking ship, like it's kind of hard to really shine.
Yeah, and I don't think that he's useless, right? And I think that's what we're trying to get across here is like
Yeah.
even though he's not the what he was when he was on Cloud9, he's not useless anymore. But he's definitely not consistent like he was on Cloud9. I think that's the biggest thing plaguing him specifically. When it comes to the roster swap of the top and mid laners, so Kumo out, Huni in, and then Jizuke out and Golden Glue in, I feel like it's weird because you normally compare mid laner to mid laner, but in this instance, it's like Jizuke was the coin flip player, and he comes out, and then Huni goes in the top lane, and now he's your coin flip player, and then the other two are like just kind of there, so to speak. Now, I actually do think that Golden Glue is better than Kumo. If that's it's such a weird thing to compare, but ultimately to me that's what it comes down to. And I think that they did say so. I'm reading one of the comments in chat saying that EG is sticking with Golden Glue through the rest of the playoffs. Um, I think that is what they said as well. Or I shouldn't say that's what they said. That's what they hinted at. Because I remember they sent out a tweet that was very misleading. It wasn't necessarily saying Golden Glue is starting for the rest of the split, but they said Golden Glue is going to be around for the rest of the split or something along those lines. So it was very like it wasn't that clear what their intentions are. At this point, though, I don't think they're going back to the other roster. It seems pretty clear to me that this is what they're set with, and they're going to move forward with it. Um, the other thing is, I just don't think that this team is good enough, though, which saddens me to say because even though they're losing a lot of games lately, I think they've looked okay. But it just seems like even though they're looking okay, everybody else above them is just looking a little bit better. And that's literally what's holding them back. And so I don't have a lot of hopes for this team to make a big playoff run anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, the way I view EG is they just haven't been making like major improvements. I think with a lot of the other teams that we've talked about for like Team Liquid, Golden Guardians, FlyQuest, and TSM, they've all made pretty major improvements throughout the majority of this split. And it kind of seems for EG, they had a pretty good start to the season and they've been solid, but they've just been solid, and there hasn't been anything more than solid for me on
Yeah.
with this team.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's unfortunate because I think EG fans had something to really be excited about at the start of the split. I remember people were talking about EG as being the second best team after week two, I want to say.
Yeah,
Maybe
we were
after
three
week
and
two or
one.
three, people were saying this is the second best team in the league, and I don't. It wasn't very obvious, but it was difficult to go against that just because of how dominant they looked. And sadly, we're not going to see that EG anymore, I don't think, because I don't think we're seeing Jizuke anymore. I would not be surprised if Jizuke is not in North America next year. But that's total speculation. I want to reiterate that we do not know if that's the case. Complete speculation. Um, yeah, the other thing about this team too is that we haven't seen this specific roster playing together for a long time now. You said that they're 2-4, meaning they've only been playing together for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks if you count the week prior. It depends on how much they were scrimming. Hard to say. The point is, every other team has way more scrim time as a 5-man unit than this team does, and whether you want to hide behind that excuse or not, it is something that impacts your team. Being able to have synergy and build synergy with your teammates matters a lot, and this roster hasn't been able to do that like all the other rosters have been able.
Yeah, I think people will kind of want to see more from this roster in terms of results, and we'll have to see if they can kind of get it together and get like a bit of a buff before playoffs come around. Because I think they're in a position where they can easily beat the lower tier playoff teams, like whether that's going to be 100T, CLG, Immortals, or Dignitas. They're honestly all pretty close in standings right now, so we don't exactly know what the 7-8 seeding is going to be look like. Is going to look like. So I think EG is they're definitely way above the bottom tier teams, but they're kind of just like a couple steps below these top teams, and that's why I don't have too much confidence in them going into these playoffs. But we'll have
Mhm.
to see. We'll have to see if they can make some major improvements before the first round of playoffs start.
Yeah, and I don't have anything else on this team that I haven't already said. I just want to also say, for people wondering about the other four teams, we felt like there's nothing really new about the other four teams to really go in depth about them. For those wondering, as of this moment, it's currently 100 Thieves and CLG sitting in a playoff spot. However, CLG is only one win above Immortals and Dignitas, so their spot is not locked in whatsoever. But basically, watching these four teams, we didn't really learn anything new from this weekend. There's not really a lot of shuffling going on in those standings per se. They're definitely the weakest teams in the region right now, and that seems pretty obvious. So there's not much more to say on those teams. Anything else on any of the teams before we move on to our awards section?
Hashtag live evil.
Yeah, hashtag live evil. So, moving on, we are going to do the weekly Bean Soup and Pop Off awards. I'll let you start it off. Who do you got this week?
No Sketcher shout out. Shout out our boy
Oh,
Sketcher,
true.
King's Moo.
Yes, we need to pray to the gods of Kingsmoo to guide us in our choices of the Bean Soup and Pop Off awards this weekend. Amen.
Yeah, for pop off this week, I got Ignar. I already discussed a little bit when we were talking about our FlyQuest section, but I think his Thresh play this week was really good. I already talked about his sort of like kind of his little innovation with the Spellbook Thresh as opposed to the regular Aftershock Thresh, and I thought he played really well. I think you're going to talk about yours, but I think there was two FlyQuest players that you could be looking at here, and I went with Ignar on this one. I think he had a really great week. Um, did his job and beautifully.
Yeah, and so I couldn't agree more. I don't need to say anything more about Ignar because I talked a bunch about him before. This guy was popping off this weekend and is definitely deserving of that award. If those of you haven't figured it out yet, I'm going with Power of Evil, as JNT may have hinted. This guy to me got absolutely robbed of Player of the Week this week. He was insane on his LeBlanc. He went 13-0 or something like that. He wrapped up 13 kills, and then, like I mentioned before, despite being totally banned out, and he got put on his sixth best mid laner, if you want to call it that, in Corki, and he still popped off on Corki anyways and picked up 7 kills in that game. I think he is now leading the league in kills. Someone can fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure he's leading the league in kills. This guy's been great, and so keep popping off PoE because your team's going to need it. And I think this guy is going to be the guy that brings them to a couple playoff series win.
Definitely agree. I think, like you said, I think both Ignar and Poe, I think actually were a little more deserving of the Player of the Week than Bjergsen. Not to take any credit away from Bjergsen, but I think not to be like that guy, but I think Bjergsen just got it because he's Bjergsen and TSM went 2-0. They're still dick sucking Bjergsen a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like you don't want to take anything away from Bjergsen because he's playing good, but there's no way he wins the player of the week this.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't need to go too much more into that. I've made that pretty clear. Who do you got? Who's your Bean Soup Award? Who really disappointed you this week, JNT?
Yeah, I think, for the majority of people, I think they may be thinking that it's someone on C9, but it's for me, it's not. I actually went with Dignitas's drafts, so I don't know exactly if that's like their coaching staff or how their players. I don't know. We don't really know how teams drafts work and who makes the calls, but I really didn't like Dignitas's drafts this weekend. They were in a position to now tie for potentially being in a playoff spot with if they were to go out and beat Immortals, which didn't happen. They lost to Immortals, kind of putting themselves in a little bit of a hole in terms of if this team wants to make playoffs. I don't think anybody was expecting that this team would be potentially in a hunt for a playoff spot, even though it's like 8 teams make playoffs. But this team was 0-8 coming into it. They got 4 wins in the back half of the split now. But man, I was really disappointed with some of their drafts this week. I think that I was more disappointed in their draft against Immortals than Team Liquid, but specifically against their Team Liquid draft, I really didn't like putting Dardoch on the set. We've heard my opinions on set jungle, but you know we like to see Dardoch on these playmaking aggressive champions, and set ain't it. I want to see him on the Lee Sin. I want to see him on the Graves. Even on something like the Karthus would honestly be fine if Karthus jungle makes some sort of a reappearance, because I still think that's a pretty good pick. Um, but yeah, I want to see Dardoch on playmakers. I don't want him being put on the set. Set is kind of just a champion that is heavily reliant on, sort of past 15 minutes, it's heavily reliant on your team. You basically don't do much of anything in team fights post 15 minutes. You're pretty much an alt plus flash ED bot. Like you're just doing minimal CC and you're hoping that you get a good W to either save yourself or do some damage to the enemies. Also, I really didn't like their blind pick Renekton on red side against Team Liquid. We've voiced our opinions on previous episodes about how we feel about the Renekton and kind of how it fits into the meta.
You're
But
spoiling some things.
sorry, I didn't know.
I
But
know you didn't know.
I really hated their blind pick, their R4 blind pick Renekton against Team Liquid. Team Liquid pretty much just picked Shen into it and was just able to shut down the entirety of the lane, and in turn shuts down entirely what Renekton wants to do as a champion. You pick Renekton to get ahead in lane. Uh, he's a good wave clear champion. Can make a lot of fights happen early on, but they pretty much just neutralized the pick with Shen. Impact kind of a known Shen player, so I'm kind of surprised that they even did that in the first place because we've seen that Impact will pick Shen whenever it's good, and he's really fucking good at it. So didn't like their draft at all. Moving to their Immortals draft, I know I just talked about Dardoch being on playmakers, but I don't want to see fucking Aframu playing shielding Lux support. That is not what I want to see. This guy has been honestly, I think he's in contention for potentially being on the All Pro team, and I'm not serious when I say I'm not joking when I say that
Yeah,
because you have I think the top 4 supports at the moment right now that you can throw up there are Core JJ, Ignar, Aframu, and Vulcan from C9. I think those are kind of the top 4 supports, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see Aframu make a potential appearance on the All Pro list. But God, I was really disappointed when I saw him playing the shielding Lux support. I don't like it. We've kind of seen in previous Dignitas drafts when Avram and Dardoch are not on playmakers, the game is really, really slow. Nothing happens, and this team just doesn't really have the firepower to go up against a great late game team like Team Liquid.
yeah.
Also, they did a set first pick against IMT, and I've already said how I don't like set jungle, but they played it top lane this game. But I don't think set's a very blind pickable champion. Has to have a lot of conditions to be met. Kind of went a bit of the split pushing build, did a Bork into Black Cleaver kind of builds. It was kind of weird, but I don't like the set first pick blind. So
Yes,
Dignitas had some poo poo drafts. I really want to
it's
see them have some better drafts before this last week, and I want to see this team make playoffs.
It's funny that you don't like the set so much because almost every team loves the set. So many teams are prioritizing the set pick and doing some good things with it. So I don't mind the set that much. I do agree with you in the sense that it's not a Dardoch kind of pick. Dardoch is very coin flippy. He wants to play something aggressive and either hard carry or hard feed. So I do agree in that sense that I don't want to see necessarily Dardoch on that pick. Um, the other thing that I will say is you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but it's okay because I came prepared for my Bean Soup Award. I kind of came with two. My initial one that I was going to go with was every team that is blind picking the Renekton. Because this is not a pick that is supposed to be it's not supposed to be picked blind. That is not what Renekton is for. Renekton is there because you want to pick him into a counter matchup where he is going to absolutely smash the lane and nullify the other top laner that is going to try to scale. That is what Renekton is for. It's not to be picked blind. You don't get much with him in the late game unless you absolutely snowball. So please, LCS teams, for the love of God, stop picking Renekton blind. I know Team Liquid did it this weekend and they got away with it because they played, I think that was the game against Dignitas. I don't remember. The point is, you can't get away with that against good teams, and it's really going to just hurt your drafts all the time if you keep doing that. My backup Bean Soup award that I did have was Poom, and I hate to give it to Poom, but he went 0 and 10, man. I don't know the last time I've seen anybody go 0 and 10 on help me out here the name
Nautilus did that
on
chance,
Nautilus.
dog.
Thank you.
Please don't pick that.
Yeah.
It like I was funny. We were watching the games and I was like I couldn't tell if Stunt or Poom was playing because when Stunt was
Mm,
playing 100T, he would pick Nautilus and go 0-8. Like that was kind of like a meme that was like kind of around Stunt. Like he would just pick Nautilus and int the game, and Poom just kind of picked Nautilus and into the game. So
yeah. And we've said 1,000 times, like on this podcast, that we don't want to be too hard on Poom. Like, there's a guy that was playing solo queue 8 months ago, so I don't want to be too hard on him. But when you go 0 and 10, I think you kind of deserve a Bean Soup award. So I kind of got to throw it his way this time around.
yeah, don't pick Nautilus, please. I beg. Stop it.
Yeah. So, and with that, that wraps up the Pop Off and Bean Soup Award for this week. Hopefully, next week we can see something a little bit less bad in the Bean Soup department because believe me, there was a lot to choose from this week for Bean Soup. So hopefully we see. Hopefully next week it's more difficult to choose from Pop Off awards. Regardless, let's hop into our picks for this week. We have our predictions going into week 9. This is the last week of the regular split. So throw it up there and let's get into that.
Yeah, so first game on Friday, we have Dignitas versus C9. Like we were kind of alluding to a little bit before, I think people want to see a solid, clean victory from C9. I'm going with C9 on this one. You know, they haven't been looking good, but they got off a little bit easy with drawing Dignitas and CLG this week, so I'm going C9.
Yeah, I gotta go with C9 too. I think this is the best chance Dignitas is ever gonna have at beating Cloud9. So there's that. But if you're struggling to beat Immortals, and no offense to Immortals, then I don't think you can beat C9, even if C9 is at their worst. So Cloud9.
And second game on Friday, we have TSM versus Golden Guardians, and I think TSM kind of both the TSM games are game of the weeks for me. Um, it's sad on this one because Golden Guardians is, I think, other than C9, I think Golden Guardians is my favorite team in the LCS. I love watching them play, but I'm going with
But
I'm going TSM on this one, and
yeah.
it hurts my heart a little bit to say that, but I said this in our last episode, but it's more that my heart wants to pick Golden Guardians, but I'm predicting the script here with TSM ending the split really strong with them beating Team Liquid, so I have to go TSM on this one.
So here's the way I'm looking at this. Both of these two teams looked really good this past weekend against Cloud9. So there's that. However, prior to that game, TSM did not look very good to me. Golden Guardians really did. So to me, I think Golden Guardians is the better team. I hope that they can prove that on Friday. So Golden Guardians for me. And by the way, I totally agree with you. This is a really good game to watch. It's maybe not our match of the week, but definitely worth watching. This one's at Friday night. 10 p.m. EST, 7 o'clock PST. This is a good one to catch. This should be a good game. Golden Guardians for me, though.
Yeah, first game on Saturday, we have Immortals versus Team Liquid. Kind of unfortunate for Immortals here. I think they're going to take 2 Ls this weekend, but They drew Team Liquid, and I don't think we're gonna see anything like the previous Immortals versus Team Liquid game. So I'm going with TL on this one, and I think it's gonna be a bit of a smashing.
I gotta say though, this game would be so crazy if Immortals wins this game. That makes the league even more interesting. As if it wasn't getting it as interesting already. This will be a really big game if Immortals wins this. Coming back down to earth a little bit though, TL, because I just think they're a lot better than Immortals.
Yep, and the next game we got Golden Guardians versus EG. Like I said, I love me some Golden Guardians, and I think they're definitely better than EG on this one. We kind of got a bit of a banger game the last time these two teams played. Closer had a really pop-off game against Lee Sin, got me a lot of fantasy points that week, so I'm expecting to see some of the same Golden Guardians on this
I
one.
want to see the better version of EG show up for this game to be really good. With that said, I don't think I'm not that confident in the right EG showing up, and I am more confident in the right GG showing up. So Golden Guardians for me, not too much to say. They're looking good all around, and they're just looking better than Evil Geniuses right now.
I see what you did there.
I am clever.
Third game we got a CLG versus FlyQuest. We've voiced our many opinions on CLG and what we think of this team, and we're both going FlyQuest on this one.
Do you think there's ever, uh, like, do you think there's ever going to be a game where we predict CLG like in the rest of the this year? I'm talking like even in playoffs. Like if CLG is playing anyone, I have them going 0-3.
Like in a playoff series, you mean?
Yeah, because right now they're in a playoff spot.
Well, like I don't know, because I don't exactly remember the exact playoff format, but I know if there's the loser of the third seed and the sixth seed and the fourth seed and the fifth seed, the loser of those two matches drops down and plays the seventh and the eighth seed. And I don't know
Yeah.
if one gets to choose, like if the seventh seed gets to choose who they want to play, or it's just based on seeding. But if that were to be the case, CLG would most likely be the eighth seeded team, and then they would probably play one of either Golden Guardians or EG if the seedings play out like that. Golden Guardians and EG being the lower seeds, and I don't see any world unless we see some next level throw that we did see in the previous CLG versus EG game. So unless something like that shit goes down, this fucking team sucks and they're not winning another game. This like, dude,
Yeah, I
man,
know.
I'm getting triggered already. This fucking team blows. They're bad. They're so bad.
Yeah,
They're
and I
so
know I got
bad.
us off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I agree. All this to say, I'm taking FlyQuest against CLG. But like you said, if CLG is in a best of five with Golden Guardians or EG or FlyQuest or TSM or C9 or whatever, I'm taking them to get 3-0'd. So, anyways, FlyQuest for me. Of course, now watch CLG going a 2-0 week. That'll be the
If
ultimate.
that happens, okay. Well,
Oh no, here we go.
this
It's about to get crazy here.
this is the
What?
first of its kind right now on the Clown Fiesta podcast. We're going down. If CLG goes 2-0, chat, whoever's in here, and whoever watches the damn YouTube video, you can hold me responsible for this. I will shave my fucking head. I swear to God.
Oh
CLG
no, man.
CLG goes 2-0, beats FlyQuest and C9. I will shave my damn head.
Oh man, that's risky.
I got faith that CLG is dog.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We both got FlyQuest. I
I
would love to
I'm
see
I'm
that,
not
man.
joking.
Man, I
I'm not
can't
joking
believe
on
I
this
want
one.
C9 to lose to CLG now, but
Dude,
like
it's funny.
that'd be
Well,
fucking hilarious.
it's funny because I'll probably be with you guys when these games are going on. Because
True.
so like I'm telling you, if it
Your hair will be
happens,
falling out if CLG's winning anyways.
dude, it'll be like nerve-wracking, but it'll be funny. But I'm serious on this one. I'm not joking here.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. So we each got FlyQuest if you didn't
Yeah,
guess
sorry,
or if you
we went
couldn't.
on like a 5 minute tangent there, but yeah, FlyQuest versus CLG, FlyQuest all the way. Last game on Saturday, we got 100T versus Dignitas. A really important game actually for, as we were mentioning, the lower seeded teams in the playoff bracket. I think 100T sitting at 5 wins, Dignitas sitting at 4 wins, and I believe that 100T has the head-to-head record over Dignitas. So pretty much a 100T victory almost guarantees their spot in playoffs. Um, but I'm gonna go with Dignitas on this one. I still have faith in Dignitas. When their drafts are good, this team looks good. And if I get Dignitas with some playmakers with Aframu and Dardoch, this team wins and this team plays really well. And I want to see that. I don't want to see set jungle. I don't want to see shielding Lux support or some random shit like that. I want to see a good draft, and I got Dig all the way on this one.
I got Dignitas as well. I'm gonna say this one last time. Hopefully, I think this is the last time. I want to see Viper down, and I want to see lower low up. I don't think it's going to happen though. I've kind of lost faith in that. Regardless, I still do think Dignitas can be the better team. Um, this is like that team that like I'm in denial. Like I think this team is better than they are, and they just keep like disappointing. That's what Dignitas is. They're just a disappointing team. But I mean, it's not like 100 Thieves is much better. This game could go either way, but yeah, Dignitas.
Okay, that's it for the Saturday games. First game on Sunday, we got C9 versus CLG. I got C9 on this one. Like we said, it'd be pretty surprising if C9 were to lose to either Dignitas or CLG, but I guess maybe if you're a fan of the show and would like to see me bald, you might want CLG to win this one.
Yeah, this could be a really interesting. I mean, this game could get a lot more interesting if CLG somehow beats FlyQuest. But yeah, C9. I don't got much more to say. We shit on CLG every week on this show. C9. Let's go next.
Second game on Sunday, we got EG versus 100T. I got EG on this one. Again, it's another somewhat important game for 100T in terms of playoff seeding. I think, like we said, pretty much a 100T win this weekend guarantees them as being the seventh seed in playoffs. But I'm going to go on with EG on this one. Like I said when we were talking about EG, EG seems to have a pretty large gap in between the bottom teams, and they're just a couple steps behind of the top teams. So for that reason, I'm going EG.
Yeah, I don't really have anything new to say about both these teams. I think it's fairly obvious where I have them. I think EG is just a little bit better, and I think they'll bounce back a little bit this week. So I'll take EG.
And third game on Sunday, we got like I said before, match of the week sort of. Definitely
Big
more
time.
more hype match than the TSM Golden Guardians match, but match of the week nonetheless. TL versus TSM. I got TSM on this one. I said it last episode. I'll say it this episode. Predicting the script. TSM's 2-0 this weekend. They're gonna beat TL, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, TSM, they're back. TSM, TSM." So I got TSM.
Sorry. So you said you got TSM, right?
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
daydreaming. I'm not gonna lie. It wasn't like there was audio issues. I was just
yeah.
out there.
I got
I got
TSM.
TL. For those wondering, this game is at 6 p.m. EST, 3 p.m. PST. If this is another game that you got to get there to watch this one. This should be really really good. Potentially could mean more than what it means right now. Like we mentioned earlier, if Immortal somehow beats TL, this game could mean a lot. But anyways, these are just two of the top teams in the league right now. They got that rivalry. Doublelift really wants a win against Soul Squad. So, good game to watch. But I think TL's better. So TL for me.
Yeah, I was just thinking about because you mentioned like imagine a scenario where C9 2-0s, TSM 2-0s, and TL goes 0-2. There's a three-way tie then for
That would be
first place.
whack.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all three teams have like a 1-1
One and
head-to-head
one.
record. So they'd have to play like a three-game round robin, and that could like lead to some pretty hype like tie-breaking matchups on on Monday the day after.
Yep.
So,
Oh, that
oh,
would be such a sad story for TL to be, climbing the whole split long and then just to fall. We already saw that with Cloud9, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But anyways, yeah, I got TL, you got TSM. Let's go next.
we got FlyQuest versus Immortals in the last game of the split. Kind of wish they would have put TSM versus TL as like the last game of the split because it's kind of
They
like
don't know that, right? Like they don't
but like
know
still
when.
like regardless of like fan bases, it's going to be a big game. But like
Yes,
well, and
true.
you can always like change the schedule like in NFL football and in week 17 when it's the last week of the regular season, like they always like will swap games around to make like a potential playoff seeding game, like a primetime game. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't do something like that. But I got FlyQuest on this one. Like we said, we're really impressed right now with FlyQuest, and we're a little bit down on Immortals due to their recent performances. Even though I think there's still hope for this team moving forward into 2021, but we got FlyQuest.
So I totally agree that you could change the schedule, but we're not talking the NFL here. We're talking the LCS, and I think you're maybe giving a little bit too much credit to people running show at the LCS.
Bro, it's not that hard, man. Just like how hard can it be to move like a game up and down?
No, I agree, but I don't think they're gonna do it.
Come on, Chris
There could
Greeley. Listen
there
to me,
could
Chris Greeley.
yeah. Anyways, it's just not
Is that
gonna
his
happen.
name,
Let's
by the
just
way?
say
I
that.
don't know. Is it
Yeah,
Chris
I think that's
Greeley
what it is.
or Chris
Yeah, I
Greenlee
think
or
so.
something like that? Chris Newby, how
Gre-
about?
Greeley?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. Nice. Anyway, yeah, FlyQuest. I don't have anything more to say. I
All
think
right,
FlyQuest is better.
that will wrap up our picks. I know I think it was like our second or third show, we did like a tally of our picks, and we haven't done one since. But for next episode, I'll get a full tally of all the picks that we've made over the split. I have a feeling though that you won because I think
Oh, really?
I take more upsets just to take an upset. So
See, last week though, was it last week or the week before that I took a bunch of upsets?
I think it was the week before, but still, I
Okay,
don't
well,
know.
I'll tell you that. Okay, here's what you could do then. When you're doing the tally up all the upset picks as well, because I'd be
Okay,
interested in
that's a
that.
good idea.
Yeah, so do that, and yeah, we'll have a true.
Yeah,
Because if I'm just being a little baby and I'm just taking the favorite all the time, that I give you permission to throw that in my
no,
face.
that's fine. I don't care. Upsets are
But
how upsets are how you like win money in sports. Like,
yeah, you want to take the yeah no, but I'm with you though. You don't want someone that just takes the favorite all the time. So if that's what I've been doing, feel free to throw that one in my face next week.
okay, yeah, no problem. And then last on the docket, we got bets for week 9. So
You
give me a
betting fiends.
yeah, you betting like yourself, Mr. Savoy.
Yes.
Let me hold
If
on.
if
Let me
anyone
pull up the
was
tin.
paying it, yeah, while you're pulling that up, if anyone was paying attention to last week's picks and you listened to them, you're a little bit richer this time around.
True.
I'm pretty sure I said to take FlyQuest, and well, FlyQuest was getting great odds, and
And
well, they 2-0'd, so they won.
and I think we said Golden Guardians was getting good
Over
odds against
CLG, they
EG.
were getting like
Oh,
55
was it
cents.
CLG?
Like,
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant
yeah,
to
over
say.
CLG. Like, okay, if Golden Guardians play CLG 10 times, I think CLG maybe wins one. Like, that was way too good of odds to get there. And so what I did was I just parlayed it with the FlyQuest. And so I cashed in pretty good on that. I think I bet like $10 and I won like 30 or something.
Okay, we're losing your face here, but give the
Bye.
people drop some knowledge on the people about what bets they should be taking.
Oh, see now you're like the thing is because I was right last week. Now I look like an idiot if I'm wrong this week. So I really got I don't got anything special. I've hyped up Golden Guardians all week long. I think they're going to win both their games. And if you look at the odds here, they're getting good odds, people. I think that TSM game that is not an easy win. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're the favorite in this game. I really like the 2.3 that they're getting there. So for all you betting fiends out there, this is a really good pick, I think. I like that one, and I like Golden Guardians over Evil Geniuses. I personally have already bet on them, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I think those are great picks. Let me just do one last second little scan. I
Yeah,
did look at this already.
I wanted to shout out the EG 100T one. I think honestly, based on teams,
EG100T.
yeah, I think EG's
Okay.
getting decent odds there. I know it's not
Mm,
necessarily like
it's okay.
it's not necessarily a free win for EG, but I think they're definitely a better team than 100T. In terms of like stylistically, Sven Skaren's kind of playing like just the do nothing, keep the other jungler under control kind of champions, and Contracts is all about like playing super aggressive. And I think Sven Skaren's really
Is there any other ones on there that you like? I noticed Dignitas on there. I think we both took Dig over 100 Thieves, right?
yes.
Like those are pretty good odds as well. And the thing is, I'm a little bit more hesitant on that one because Dignitas, like I said, is that team that just keeps disappointing me. But I still think those are pretty good odds too. So if you're looking for another upset, that's a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, definitely some decent bets you can take this week.
Yep,
You're
yep.
back.
And just for those that don't know, it does fluctuate throughout the week. So like
Yeah,
those
what you
Golden
see right
Guardians
now
picks,
might not be exactly the same come
yeah.
Thursday,
And it also
Friday.
differs depending on what site you're on, what betting site. But if you're wanting to take those Golden Guardian picks, do it now because there's no way it stays that way. It definitely has to change just because of how good they've looked lately. But yeah, anyways, let's go Golden Guardians.
Yeah, and that's gonna conclude episode 9, the Clown Fiesta podcast. Thanks everybody who's sticking around in the chat. Definitely feel free to check out our YouTube, our Twitters. I know Jamie tweets a lot more regularly than I do because I look for those spicy moments of LCS content that I can see.
Yeah.
I was looking all week at like whenever Immortals is playing for at like Insanity's player cam to see like if he was drinking another like carton of orange juice because dude,
Yeah.
that was hilarious when that happened.
JNT tweeted out that Insanity's got the juice, baby, and he
Yeah,
definitely did. That was really funny. Randomly, just massive chug of orange juice,
yeah,
or jug of orange juice rather. But anyways, thank you for those that are following. If you're liking the episode, no matter where you're watching it, we are trying to grow the live show. So I mean, some of you are listening to this live right now. Do hit that follow button. We did see somebody else that just followed, so thank you.
shout out
And for those
Bruce.
that are listening on YouTube, go to twitch.tv/Clown Fiesta Podcast, all one word, of course, because it's URL, and go and hit a follow. And just for those that don't know, it does happen right before Hotline League every Monday. So it starts at 9 p.m. EST, 2 hours before Hotline starts. So be sure to come hit the live show up, and feel free to hit us up on our socials, like Nolan mentioned, and in the chat. We love to hear from you guys. We love your guys' interaction. And Nolan, let them know where else they could find the episodes.
Yeah,
Actually,
the YouTube VOD will always be up. I try to post it right after the episode concludes every week, so expect to see that in a couple hours. If you, for whatever reason, missed out some parts in the middle, didn't get to see the start of the episode, the full VOD's always up on YouTube. And just as of a couple weeks ago, we're now on Spotify as well as a few other podcasting platforms, some smaller scale ones, but the main ones being Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. So that link will be in all of the descriptions of the YouTube videos, and I'm gonna now put it on our Twitter page. So, and that'll be a direct link to our Spotify and our Anchor podcast page, which has all the links where you can find us on all the different platforms. Yeah, I really appreciate anybody watching live or anybody who's watching or listening on YouTube or Spotify. Really appreciate all the support we've been getting on some of the YouTube videos. The views are going up. We're really happy about that.
yep.
Feel free to leave a comment or contact us on socials. Let us know what we can do to improve. I know we appreciate everyone kind of sticking through some of the audio issues I've been having on my end, and also the poor stream that we had just a couple weeks ago. But really appreciate everyone, continuing to follow and watch the content. It means a lot to us.
The quality will get better too. JNT is intending on getting a new mic, so for those wondering about like the sound, like we are aware of it. We're working on it. Yeah, no, the feedback by everyone has been freaking awesome. By the way, everyone's been really supportive. So we're yeah, I don't know. We're very appreciative.
Yeah, stay tuned. I mean, I could be bald next episode. Who knows?
Oh my god, man, that would be freaking awesome. Please be bald.
I know somebody put in chat saying that it'd be a banger video, but yeah, if again for whatever reason CLG 2Os, which is I'll give it like a 0.1% chance of happening. If that were to happen, we'll definitely record it or something and post it on YouTube or something.
JNT is malding.
I would be molding if that were to happen, but I think it'd be funny, honestly. I've kind of always wanted. I was thinking of shaving my head when like quarantine kind of happened because I didn't know when I was going to be able to get a haircut. So like not like of going full bald, but like doing like a buzz cut. But full bald, I'm talking about. I'll go
All
full
right, let's
bald.
go, man. Let's go
So if
CLG.
if you're if you don't like me or you want to see me bald, get your like I don't know, rep some CLG stuff and put like hashtag CLG win in the fucking chat or something on Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Let's get that.
Uh,
Let's get that going in the chat, you fools. CLG
yeah.
or JNT bald CLG win or some shit like that.
Some shit like that. Hit us up on our socials too for that. Like he said
Standing
before,
CLG. It's
we're trying
funny.
to be more active on Twitter. So yeah, keep an eye on that as well, and feel free to drop a follow there. I don't got anything to say. This has been a really long closeout to the episode.
Yeah, just we appreciate all you guys for sticking around, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.
All right, bye everyone.